This is Soviet Tier 7 light cruiser Lazo, and she's what I would call a freemium ship because she's a premium that you can, in theory, get for free, or perhaps with a little cash top-up, and we'll talk about how you can get her in just a moment. She was never actually built. She's what you might call a paper ship, but she was planned, and she's essentially a cross between a Chapayev and a Shaw's. She has light guns. She's designed to be a rear guard cruiser, like a support cruiser. She's not designed to be at the front. We'll get into some gameplay later, and I've got a bit of a replay to show you about how you might want to go about playing the ship successfully. We'll look at her in port shortly, but her basics are that she has 452mm triple turrets, 2 fore and 2 aft. She has quite long range, very accurate guns, and her party piece is that she has a spotter plane with a very short 10-second base cooldown. This special spotter plane consumable informs the playstyle of this ship and allows you to provide continuous range support for up to 5 or 6 minutes in a match. I mentioned earlier that the ship is freemium. You can get it for free by taking part in the current Victory campaign in 083. You'll find it in the arsenal. It costs 1,500 of the tokens that you can get from completing the missions, the daily missions of the event. And you can see all the rules if you go into the game and go into the event rules. Now, if you don't quite get enough tokens, don't worry. You can actually have a little top up. If you buy premium Russian containers, you can get a few tokens in those, 75 tokens in each container. So you can top up to the 1,500 if you're not quite there. As far as I know, you have until the patch ends at roughly the end of May to get the Lazo. Okay, we're going to take a little look now at the Lazo in the port and have a look at some of its vital statistics. If you've played the Russian cruiser line, this will be fairly familiar to you. It has choice between Def AA and Hydro. It has that spotter plane with the base 10-second cooldown, which you can get down a little bit with some signals and some commander perks. I recommend mounting the spotter plane modification if you've got it. You can of course get that for coal from the arsenal. I also recommend mounting the rudder shift upgrade because you're going to be doing a lot of dodging in the ship, and it's quite important because if you attract any attention then you're not going to be happy, especially if it's from battleships. This is how I would build it. If you want to pause the video, then pause it. You definitely want IFHE on the 152mm guns, and you definitely want concealment just in case you're getting a little bit too close and you want to get away. You can go dark and then kite away. This ship kites very, very well. If you want to pause the video as I mouse over any of these statistics, then please do. It has a 9-second reload on the main battery guns, but they're very, very accurate. You're likely to land all of your shelves, even if you're at extreme range. It doesn't have particularly good AA. If you're out on your own, which you probably will be in the ship, then you need to be careful you don't get too much attention from the carrier, and if you do, maybe move a bit closer to another ship. Concealment of 11.6, which is pretty good with the commander skill enabled. Taking a little look at the armor scheme, it's very, very similar to the Chapayev and the Shaw's. It has pretty good armor belt, but generally 16mm plating. So you can, if you angle well, that belt will protect you to a certain extent. But if any battleship looks at you, you are going to be in trouble. It's got a very large citadel. It spans obviously from the back of the rear guns to the front of the front guns. It sits well above the waterline and spans the entire width of the ship, so any battleship AP that catches you, especially catches you broadside, if it doesn't overpen, it's going to do you a lot of damage, so you need to be very, very careful about what is looking at you, and you need to pay a lot of attention, which is why I've taken the incoming fire alert on the captain. I don't often take that skill, but I do recommend it. Right, I've got a little replay for you here that I think shows off the assets of this ship and probably the most effective way to play it. You don't have to play it like this, but I think this is a pretty good way to play this ship as a long-range support cruiser. So this is a mid-tier match. You saw the lineup there. Feel free to go back and look at it again. There is a carrier. It's a Lexington. So we might get a little bit of focus from that. I honestly can't remember. But I'm going to be going to the north. I'm going to be working around Charlie and Bravo here and supporting our ships that are a bit closer than I am. Now, as I said before, you really don't want to get close in this ship. The asset of this ship and the advantage of this ship is it has relatively long range. And with that spotter plane, you have even more range, and it's very, very accurate. So you do not want to give the advantage to the enemy team by getting too close to them and allowing them to do good damage to you because of your poor armor scheme, or relatively poor armor scheme. So you definitely want to be staying behind your other ships. Don't feel like you have to rush in. At the beginning of the match, I would definitely just, do what I'm doing here, go like half speed, just watch where everyone's going, and make sure that you're there to support the ships that do push in. So for example, we've got a Baltimore there that's just to my right, and he is pushing up, presumably to go towards that island for a bit of cover. Well, I hope he is. So it would be sensible for me to be over sort of slightly to the east of him so that I can provide a bit of support and stop him from getting pushed, because anything that starts getting HE rained on its head from afar and can't shoot back critically, because this thing even outranges some battleships, because when you pop that spotter plane your range goes up quite considerably. So 17.3 without the spotter plane up, and I think it goes up to around about 21 kilometers with the spotter plane. So you can definitely outrange quite a lot of ships with this thing, even if it's bottom tiered. And of course, as long as you keep moving, he says, stopping, as long as you keep moving, battleships are going to have a hard time hitting you at that range, because you can, quite easily change direction and angle and change your speed and so on. So if you're, a good tip actually, if you're in an open water cruiser and you're trying to kite and stay safe, you definitely do not want to come to a stop. You definitely want to be always moving, even if you're just going quarter speed, or even if you're just reversing in maybe some of the more armoured cruisers at higher tiers. You definitely don't want to be sat still in the water, because that's just a gift for any battleship that looks at you. So yeah, so you see I stopped and let the battleships go past me there, so I'm going to be behind those guys, and I'm trying to find targets that I can maybe help them out by setting fires when they damage control, or just helping to dissuade ships that are getting a little bit too pushy. So I've got my eye there on that North Carolina that's pushing into the Charlie Cap. If he shows his nose through that gap, I'd definitely be shooting at him. Hopefully, pay attention to the accuracy of the guns here. If I keep my camera on the target, I think you'll agree they're pretty accurate. Also, of course, they have Russian shell arcs, so they're going to be very flat. You can see the launch trajectory there at 15 kilometers is very flat. Nice short flight time, nice and easy to aim, even though I missed because he slowed down. But they are very, as long as you aim well, they're pretty easy to consistently hit with. Now I know he stopped, I can get my shots on target. So you're going to land. I landed 5 out of the 12 shells there. So, and that was probably not a particularly good volley. So if you get a bit more accuracy, you can land quite a few of your shells. Another 5. Obviously, on a battleship with 152s, even with IFHE, you're probably going to shatter quite a lot of shells on their armour, but of course you are going to get some fires and you're going to get some superstructure damage as well. I'm just going to speed up the footage here a little bit as I focus on this North Carolina. It's just going to be volley after volley after volley, basically, and that's a lot of what you're going to be doing in this ship, is just watching the minimap, just launching HE after HE, getting fires on a particular ship, waiting for them to damage control. But you also need to keep an eye on what's going on the minimap, so don't become too blinkered, because even though you're at the back and you're probably not in much danger, you could easily become in danger if you don't keep an eye on the minimap and watch what the rest of your team is doing. So if your team, for example, starts kiting away and you don't realise, you could easily end up at the front if you're not watching. So just make sure you press shift and just zoom out occasionally and just have a look at what's going on, keep an eye on the minimap. And look out for targets that around you that damage control, apart from the one that you're shooting at. Especially if you're in a division, if someone calls that something is damage conned, make sure that you go and aim at that and get a fire on that, because you can do it probably better than most other ships because of your accuracy and your range. So I switch over here to the Richelieu, and pretty much same thing, just trying to get some fires on him and just harass him, try and discourage him from pushing forward too much. Notice that even though I'm quite a long way from those mountains, I'm actually struggling to lob them, and that's one of the reasons why you need to play this ship in open water. If you try and sit behind an island, like say, I don't know, a Cleveland or something like that, you're actually going to struggle, because you're going to have to stick your nose or your rear end out around the island to actually be able to lob even the flattest of islands. So you definitely want to be playing this open water, and then if you start to get a bit too much focus, just stop firing. You're going to be if you're playing it well, I think you're going to be massively out of detection range. You can just stop firing. Within 20 seconds, you go dark, and you can just relocate and then wait until whatever it was shooting you has moved on to something else. Of course, the accuracy means that you can shoot capping destroyers with quite a lot of accuracy. So I've just sent some shells towards that Farragut and then moved back to the Richelieu. But I think my team's going to do a pretty good job on that Farragut anyway. So I'm about to change direction, and the reason I do this is I can see that there's a couple of battleships over the back, so there's a couple of North Carolinas coming to support this Richelieu. But also I think what's going to happen is that the enemy team is going to give up trying to push C, because it's very difficult to penetrate through those islands. So I think you'll see some ships coming down to try and get an angle round by Bravo. So I'm just going to make a turn here. I'm also running out of map, and I don't want to get too close to that Richelieu. And if those North Carolinas continue to push, I could be in a little bit of danger. So, as I said during the intro, you definitely want to try and stay at your maximum range with this ship and use your spotter plane if you need that little bit of extra range, or to be able to like see over an island or something like that. So I've just done a 180 and I'm going to head back, and there you can see there's a cruiser there heading towards Bravo, so I've kind of got my eye on him as well. And of course I can easily shoot through the islands around Charlie to the stuff behind it to support my teammates. So I've really got my eye on this North Carolina here, poor guy. I'm basically just trying to burn him down. Now, it's very difficult shooting through islands like that, which is why the spotter plane is so handy. Now, I'm actually getting shells on him, so I'm not bothering to launch it here, but I could do. There you go. So when you lose vision, you can pop your spotter plane and you can see over the mountain, although because of the flat shell arcs, again, I'm struggling to lob that mountain that's in front of him, so I'm trying to get to the gap that's in front of me so that I can get easier shells on him. Of course, with the spotter plane up, it's also easy to see what speed people are doing at range and whether they're changing direction and things like that. And using a spotter plane is something that a lot of people shy away from, but I thoroughly recommend actually going and practicing with it. You know, you can go into co-op battles and practice against the bots, or maybe get a training room and get a buddy and get them to move around at maximum range, and you try and get shells on them, or just take a ship with spotter plane into randoms and just practice in there. This is certainly a very good ship to learn how to use a spotter plane, because you really need to use the spotter plane on the ship to get the most out of it. So if you've never used a spotter plane, maybe get the ship and learn to use it. So I'm still trying to lob that North Carolina, where it's very difficult for me to drop my shells down behind that island. Yeah, he's definitely gone, so I'm going to switch to the other North Cal for a second and hope that the first North Cal keeps going and comes around the other end of the island, because I really want to finish him off. Now, this kind of badgering playstyle is not for everyone. You know, 95% of your play in this ship is going to be like this. It's going to be gradually building up damage over time with your IFHE shells, particularly on cruisers. But also, you know, you'll get some fires on battleships and things like that. You're not going to be getting any dev strikes in this probably, because basically if you move into a range where you could potentially get a torp on something, which would be 4 kilometers, or an AP salvo on something, you are way too close for the armor scheme of this ship. I've just spotted an opportunity to make sure that Richelieu dies, but nope, he's fine. So I'm going to go back on the North Cal. Just waiting for that other North Carolina to come around the other end of that volcano island there. But yeah, so this playstyle isn't for everyone, and I generally don't like open water cruisers like this, but with the spotter plane mechanic on this ship, actually I quite enjoyed playing this, and I actually played it a lot more than I thought I would do, because I missed out on the original test period for this, because I wasn't a community contributor when this came around for testing the first time, so I've only played the final version here. So I was quite surprised by how many games I wanted to play in this ship. I quite enjoyed this playstyle when I haven't enjoyed this playstyle on other ships, which I think does speak a lot about this ship. If I like it, then chances are it's pretty good. Okay, well, this looks like we've pretty comfortably won this, 860 odd points to 289. All 3 caps, they're all squashed up in the corner. While I haven't had any kills, I haven't had any massive strikes, you're not going to get those in this ship most of the time. But I have done, nearly 90,000 damage, and hopefully I have provided a deterrent to any ships wanting to push into Charlie, because they're going to be looking at the shells coming constantly downrange and accurately hitting everything around them. And they're going to be thinking, ooh, if I go through that gap, it's actually going to get a lot worse. Even though, ironically, the truth is probably if they push through the gap, they'd be able to kill me and stop me. I think it is a strong psychological deterrent, this ship. So I completed my personal mission for the event, which was get 5 modules damaged. I did that. 88,500 damage. 1,200 base XP on a win. Not too bad. Again, you know, you're probably not going to get extremely high XP in the ship because of the way that it plays. And you can see there, you know, I did most of my damage to those 3 battleships, who just happened to be the good targets for me at the time. Although with IFHE, you probably want to be trying to target cruisers if you can. So what are my final thoughts and my recommendation for this ship, considering that it's a freemium and you can get it, as I said, completely for free, or either for free and with a little bit of money put into some containers just to top up your tokens. Yes, I do recommend this ship, especially if you've played Chapayev and Chors, and you like that kind of open water light cruiser playstyle, especially if you either like playing with a spotter plane or you're interested in learning how to play with a spotter plane, then I do heartily recommend this ship. I have surprisingly really enjoyed playing it, despite the fact that I don't generally like this style of cruiser, which I think is a good sign. So yes, I do recommend the ship. Go and get it. Okay, that's all from me on the Lazo. Please do go and join the StatsBloke Discord, link in the description, and do catch me on Twitch, also link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I will speak to you very soon. I just need to add one quick note about my review about Montpelier that I uploaded a few days ago. Wargaming have since announced that the 10-kilometer radar on Montpelier and on Wichita was actually a mistake. It shouldn't have been changed to 10 kilometers. It should be 9 kilometers on both those ships. And so that actually changes my recommendation for Montpelier, which is that it's too similar to Cleveland, basically, to justify buying it as a premium ship. So I don't recommend buying it. It's a decent ship. It's the same as a Cleveland pretty much. It's got slightly slower reload, it's got slightly higher health, and it's got an increased sigma of 2.15 instead of 2.0. So it's a decent ship, but I don't think it justifies the money for a premium, so I do not recommend Montpelier. But if you're a collector or you like Azure Lane, go ahead, it's a decent ship.